Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to completely reframe how you think about consistency, habit formation, and honestly, failure. If you've ever felt like your willpower is just broken, well, you're in exactly the right place. We're diving into the actual science behind why we stick to things and why we sometimes fall off the wagon.
So let's be real for a second. Does one single mistake absolutely ruin a habit? Think about how you normally react when you skip a workout, or maybe eat something off your diet, or just miss a day of writing. Do you brush it off, or do you get hit with this crushing wave of guilt? We've all been sold this idea that a perfect streak is the only way to succeed, and that one little slip-up just wipes out all your hard work. Today, we're going to completely shatter that myth.
Here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with the myth of perfection, then your brain on consistency. Next, the abstinence violation effect. After that, avoiding the second mistake. Then we'll look at the consistency paradox. And finally, we'll wrap up with the compound effect.
All right, let's jump straight into Section 1, the myth of perfection and how intensity compares to consistency.
You know, we so often confuse intensity with consistency. Intensity, think of a grueling 3-hour workout or pulling a crazy all-nighter, feels incredibly productive in the moment, right? It gives us this huge rush, but it usually leads to what we call a sawtooth pattern of progress. You get this massive spike in effort, and then boom, you hit burnout and slide right back down. Consistency, though, it's all about finding a sustainable, long-term rhythm. It might not look nearly as glamorous on day one, but trust me, it is literally the only way to build actual lasting momentum.
Moving on to Section 2, your brain on consistency. Let's look at the neurobiology here.
Okay, so consistency isn't just some character trait you're either born with or not. It is a remarkably elegant neurological process, and it's driven by your basal ganglia. Your brain uses this thing called the SNS, ascending spiral. Think of it like a handoff, taking an abstract goal like wanting to get fit and turning it into a physical automated movement. And dopamine? Dopamine is the absolute hero here. It doesn't just give you a reward, it literally acts as a signal filter. It prunes away all those distracting signals so that your routine actions actually start to feel effortless. Meanwhile, your cerebellum acts as the gas pedal, regulating the speed and the vigor of what you're doing.
Now, to put this into perspective, we have to talk about the famous Lally et al. Study from University College London, because it powerfully debunks the whole 21-day myth. Sure, a really simple habit, like drinking a glass of water right after breakfast, might become automatic in about 18 days. But a complex habit, like a rigorous full-on gym routine, that can take up to 254 days to reach peak automaticity. It requires a long, incredibly stable plateau of repetition. So if you're struggling after just a month, listen to me, you are not failing. Your brain is just still building the scaffolding.
Which brings us to Section 3, the abstinence violation effect and our psychological enemies.
Our very first enemy here is hyperbolic discounting. Since our brains evolved in an environment where we needed immediate returns to survive, we carry this massive cognitive bias toward instant gratification. Your brain is hardwired to value the immediate dopamine hit of, say, scrolling social media or eating a fresh, warm chocolate chip cookie way more than the delayed reward of your future health or finishing a big project. And this creates some serious structural friction against your long-term goals.
Now, because of all that friction, mistakes are just inevitable. They're gonna happen. But we absolutely have to separate a lapse from a relapse. A lapse is just a single isolated slip-up. You missed one day, big deal. A relapse, on the other hand, is a full-blown return to old destructive patterns. A lapse is merely a data point, but how we choose to react to that one single data point completely determines whether it spirals into a full relapse.
When you do experience a lapse, your brain gets hit with cognitive dissonance. Think of this as the intense mental static you feel when your actions suddenly clash with your goals. You're thinking, wait, I'm a disciplined person, but you just did something completely undisciplined. Holding those two conflicting ideas is psychologically exhausting. So, to resolve that discomfort, your brain often forces you to change your beliefs rather than your actions, basically convincing you that you must just be a complete failure.
And that brings us directly to the abstinence violation effect, or AVE. This is when your recovery gets completely hijacked. It triggers this toxic all-or-nothing trap. You have one piece of cake, your brain screams that the entire diet is ruined, and so you just eat the whole cake. AVE creates a devastating shame spiral because it tricks you into internalizing a minor, situational mistake as a permanent personal flaw. It completely destroys your self-efficacy, making you think that even trying to get back on track is pointless.
Let's get into how we fix this in Section 4, avoiding the second mistake through strategic recovery.
I absolutely love this quote from James Clear.
He says the most important thing is not to prevent mistakes altogether, but to avoid making a mistake twice in a row. That is the secret. Elite performers, whether they're CEOs, athletes, or artists, they aren't perfect. They miss workouts. They eat junk food. The difference is entirely about the recovery speed. They just simply refuse to let one mistake turn into a pattern.
So to kill that pattern of failure before it snowballs, you need some actionable steps. First off, focus your energy strictly on starting. Don't stress about making up for a missed day with some agonizing 3-hour workout. Just literally get your feet on the mat. Second, use the 2-minute rule to lower the barrier to entry. Just do 2 minutes of the habit, whatever it is. Third, set a rigid schedule so you aren't just sitting around waiting for motivation to magically strike. And finally, audit your day to eliminate whatever distractions pulled you off track in the first place. Just subtract the friction.
And when you do feel that shame spiral creeping in, try deploying the RAP technique. It's a classic tool from cognitive behavioral therapy. Step 1, be realistic. Acknowledge that one tiny slip absolutely does not erase months of hard-earned progress. Step 2, be adaptive. Focus entirely on the very next immediate right action. And step 3, be positive. Reframe the lapse. It's not a failure, it's actually a critical, teachable moment. This framework right here is the ultimate structural antidote to the abstinence violation effect.
Moving on to Section 5, the consistency paradox, looking at exploration versus exploitation.
So, believe it or not, there's actually a very real danger to what we might call blind consistency. In both business and in life, there's a constant tension between exploitation, which is refining your current methods for maximum efficiency, and exploration, which is actively searching for brand new opportunities. If you are relentlessly consistent in only exploiting your current model, you become rigid. This is exactly the kind of tragic strategic inertia that took down corporate giants like Kodak and Nokia. They were way too consistent in their old ways, and they completely failed to explore the future.
But if we look at the interpersonal level, consistency is literally the lifeblood of an organization. Effective leadership absolutely demands the elimination of toxic mood swing management. Interpersonal trust and workplace psychological safety, they rely almost entirely on a leader's behavioral predictability. When leaders consistently close communication loops and apply organizational justice fairly, employee mental health and performance just soar. Without that predictability, trust instantly collapses.
Finally, Section 6, the compound effect and the math of persistence. Here is the hard truth. Right before a massive breakthrough, consistency feels completely unrewarding. You are stuck in what's known as the plateau of latent potential. Think of a stonecutter whacking at a rock 100 times without a single crack, only for it to completely split open on the 101st blow. Or think of giant bamboo. It builds invisible root systems underground for 4 whole years before suddenly shooting 80 feet into the air in just 6 weeks. Or even an ice cube sitting in a room warming from 25 degrees to 31 degrees. You see zero visible change until it hits 32 degrees and finally melts. The work you're putting in isn't being wasted, it's just being stored. Now check out this number, 37.78. That right there is the jaw-dropping math behind all that stored potential. James Clear's 1% rule shows that if you can improve your habits by just 1% every single day, the compound effect kicks in. You won't just be a little bit better, you will be almost 38 times better by the end of a single year. Think about that. That is the radical, undeniable power of relentless small actions. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a final provocative thought. You are going to make mistakes. You are absolutely going to break your streak at some point. But when you do, will you let your next lapse become a full-blown relapse? Will you let yourself fall victim to that shame spiral? Or will you just use it as a simple data point, a moment to pause, recover quickly, and use it to fuel your compound growth? The choice and the math is entirely yours. Thanks for joining me today, and keep pushing forward.